Hey everyone, hope you're all in a good mood today because I've got a new story for you. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really means a lot to me. Let me back up because I need you to understand the setup. And I need you to understand it fast. Because I've been sitting in the same apartment as this man for 4 days since I read that, and I have not said a word to him yet, and I need to think it through before I open my mouth. And honestly, typing it out is the only way I'm keeping myself from walking into that bedroom and throwing his own water cup at his head. So, Norman and I have been together a little over 2 years. We live in my apartment, my lease, my name. I signed it before we even met. Remember that. Because it's going to matter. He moved in about a year ago after his roommate situation fell apart. And it was supposed to be temporary. And then temporary just quietly became permanent the way it does when you're in love and not paying attention. He never went on the lease. He kept saying he'd talk to my landlord about getting added so he could feel like it was really his too. And it never happened. And I let it slide because it felt petty to push. And now I'm looking at that decision like it's the one smart thing past me did without knowing why. Norman's really into fitness. That's kind of his whole identity. The gym, the meal prep, the progress photos, the little community of people who all work out at the same place at the same hours. And for a long time I thought it was great. Like, good for him. He's disciplined, he's got friends. He's got a thing he loves. One of those gym people is Katie. He's talked about Katie for months. Katie spots him. Katie does the same program. Katie gets it in a way I apparently don't. Because I don't train. I'd met her twice. Both times she was friendly in that way that now makes my skin crawl. And every single time I ever said anything about how much time he spent texting her, he'd tell me I was being insecure. That she was just a training partner. That not everything is what my anxiety tells me it is. He was very good at making me feel small for noticing things. I want that on the record because a lot of what I did over the last 2 years only makes sense if you understand he had me half convinced my own eyes were the problem. Okay, so the surgery. He tore something in his knee. Legit injury, not making light of it. And he needed a full reconstruction, which meant weeks of not being able to put weight on it. Not driving, not cooking, not doing basically anything for himself for the first stretch. And when the surgery got scheduled, he came to me almost in tears about how scared he was, how he didn't have anyone else, how his family's a mess, and his mom Della is not exactly a caretaker type. And he asked me if I would take the time to be there for him. And I did. Of course I did. I loved him. I used up my paid time off and then arranged to work reduced hours from home so I could be there for the rest. Which means I've taken an actual financial hit for this. My next couple of paychecks are going to be noticeably lighter. And I did it without a second thought. Because that's what you do for your person. And it hasn't been light work, I want to be clear. The first week and a half, he genuinely could not do much. And I did all of it. I drove him to every appointment. I picked up his prescriptions. I set alarms for his meds in the night. I helped him to the bathroom when he couldn't manage the crutches yet. I cooked everything. I cleaned everything. I did his laundry. I bathed him basically because he couldn't get the surgical site wet on his own and needed someone to help him manage it. I paid for the extra groceries and the pharmacy stuff and the cab, the one time I couldn't drive him because I had a work call I could not miss. I have not slept a full night in almost 3 weeks. And the whole time he was sweet to me, thankful, telling me he didn't know what he'd do without me. Telling me this was going to make us stronger. Telling me he saw our whole future in how I was showing up for him. So now the phone. He'd been napping and woke up and asked me to grab his charger and plug his phone in. And I picked it up off the floor by the bed and it buzzed and the screen came on. And it was a chat with Katie. And it was already open to that message. The one he'd sent her. That I quoted at the top. Give me 3 weeks. The pathetic nurse is paying for everything and wiping my ass for free. Once I can walk, she's gone. And under it, Katie had reacted with a laughing face and typed something about how she couldn't wait and how she felt a little bad for me, but not that bad. And he'd written back, haha, don't. She signed up for this, and there was a string of stuff above it I could see before the screen dimmed. Plans. An apartment listing. Her asking when he thinks he'll be mobile enough. Him saying the physical therapy timeline works out perfect, because I'd be driving him to appointments right up until he's independent and then he's out. So let me spell out what I understood standing there holding his phone and his water. He was never scared of the surgery being alone. He'd already decided to leave me for Katie before the surgery even happened. He looked at the reconstruction and the weeks of total dependence and he did the math and figured out it was cheaper and easier to have me do all of it. The driving and the paying and the bathing and the middle of the night meds, and dump me the second he could physically function without me. The tears about being scared, the asking me to take the time off, the whole future speech, that was the pitch. He recruited me for a job and let me think it was love. I put the phone on the charger. I plugged it in like he asked. I handed him his water and I asked him if he needed anything else, and he said, "No, babe, thank you. You're amazing." And I walked into the kitchen and stood there. I did not scream. And I know some of you are going to ask why I didn't march in there and end it on the spot. And the honest answer is that in the 10 seconds after I read it, a very clear thought landed, which is that right now he thinks I don't know, and the moment he knows I know, all the power shifts to him. Because he'll just leave. He'll call Katie. She'll come get him. And he walks out of my apartment, having used me for the hardest 3 weeks and paying 0 price, off to the life he already picked. Knowing something he doesn't know I know is the only card I have, and I wasn't going to burn it in a fit of rage in the first 10 seconds. But I'm not made of stone, and the next 2 days were their own special hell because I still had to do it. I still had to help him. I made him dinner that night with my hands shaking the whole time. I brought him his meds. And here's where it started to crack, because I'm a person, not a saint. And I could not turn the warmth back on the way it used to be. So I got quieter and more clipped. And he noticed, and he started asking what was wrong. Was I mad at him? Did he do something? And I kept saying I was just tired. Which is true, I am tired. I'm so tired. But he kept pushing it, and there was this one night he actually got a little irritated with me and said he could feel me being cold with him, and after everything he was going through, he needed me to not check out on him right now. That's the part that nearly broke me. This man, lying in the bed I pay for, being bathed by the woman he called pathetic in writing, telling Emmy not to check out on him. And I almost did it. I almost threw the whole plan out and screamed the message back at him word for word right there. But instead I asked him, and I tried to keep my voice level, whether he was happy with us, whether he actually saw a future here. Because I said I needed to hear it. And he went full into it. He grabbed my hand and told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. That going through this with me showed him I was the one. That once he was back on his feet, he wanted to talk about the future seriously. Maybe finally get me a ring. Maybe get his name on the lease so we're official in every way. Getting his name on the lease. He looked me in the eye, 3 days after calling me the pathetic nurse he's discarding, and floated moving deeper into my apartment. And I realized this isn't just a guy leaving. He's going to milk every last thing he can out of me on the way out the door. And if I'd stayed clueless another month, he might have talked me into signing him onto my lease right before he vanished. And I'd be untangling him from my housing while he moved in with Katie. I said something non-committal, that we'd talk about all that when he was better, and I went to do dishes. So here's what I've pieced together since. Because once I knew what I was looking at, other things started clicking that I'd explained away for months. All those late gym sessions were real gym sessions, but they were also him and Katie. The training partner texts at midnight. A weekend a while back, he said he was helping a gym friend move and came back different. Distracted. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have every date and detail nailed down. Because I don't. And I'm not going to invent a perfect timeline to make you believe me. What I have is a pattern I ignored and one message that made the pattern make sense. I don't know exactly when it started. I know where it's going, because he wrote it down. The other piece is his mom, Della. I mentioned his family's a mess. The truth is, Norman and his mother have this weird money thing where he acts embarrassed by her but calls her when he needs something. And I only bring her up because when he was pitching me the surgery, he made a big point of how Della couldn't be counted on, and that's why he needed me. But I've talked to Della a handful of times, and she is not the monster he describes. She's just a woman who got tired of being used by her own son. Which, I'm starting to see the family resemblance in the being used department. She's the only person on his side of things I might actually be able to talk to. And I haven't decided yet if that's a door I want to open. Right now it's the middle of the night. He's asleep. His next PT appointment that I'm scheduled to drive him to is in 2 days. And he still thinks the pathetic nurse doesn't know a thing. I'm sorry. I would have unplugged the charger. Not his phone, like his entire little recovery program. Calling her the pathetic nurse while she is setting alarms to give him medication at night made me feel violent. And Katie laughing like she won something. Congratulations, girl, your prize needs help showering and is already planning how to exploit the woman before you. Then Norman sensed up getting cold and basically complained that his free nurse wasn't smiling enough. That part is so nasty to me. He doesn't just need her labor. He needs her to lovingly perform the girlfriend role so he can feel like a good man while treating her like absolute garbage. And the ring and lease speech, oh my god. He's lying there with one functional leg trying to secure tenant rights before escaping to Katie. I know Op wants him to pay, but I need her to screenshot everything and stop wiping this man's ass immediately. Call Della. Call Katie. Call a medical transport. Call literally anyone except me. Because Norman would be taking his next dose with his belongings packed beside him. Update. I need to start with the thing that changed everything, which is that I called Della, his mother. And it did not go the way I planned, and I mean that in both directions, good and bad, so let me walk you through it because I'm still turning it over. But first, the days before that, because they matter. After I wrote the first post, I made myself keep going with the caretaking, and I know some of you were horrified that I kept helping him. But you have to understand my whole position depended on him thinking nothing had changed. And also, and this is the ugly honest part, I needed the 2 days to figure out what I actually wanted out of this, because just kicking him out felt like letting him win. He'd get exactly what he wrote in that message. He walks, she's gone, on his schedule, clean. I couldn't stomach it. The problem was I'm a bad actress when I'm this angry, and he could tell something was off, and he would not let it go. He kept circling back to it. Are you sure you're okay? You seem distant. Did I do something? And every time he asked, I had to swallow the message whole and say I was just wiped out. And there was this one afternoon it almost came out sideways, because he asked me to reschedule one of his PT sessions to a later slot so it wouldn't eat my whole morning. Being considerate, being thoughtful. And I realized he was managing my mood so I'd keep driving him. And I said something short back. I don't even remember exactly. Something like, "It's fine, I'll drive you. That's my job apparently." And he caught the word job and asked what that was supposed to mean. And I looked at him, and for 1 second I wanted to say it. I wanted to say I know what my job is. I read the description. 3 weeks and the pathetic nurse is gone. But I didn't. I said I meant taking care of him was basically a full-time job right now. Haha. And he softened and told me he'd make it up to me for the rest of our lives. And I went to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub and put a towel over my face so he wouldn't hear me. That night, I decided I needed to know how deep this went and how fast it was moving. Because the message mentioned an apartment listing and Katie asking when he'd be mobile. And I needed to know if they had an actual move-in date, because that changed my timeline. And I couldn't get back into his phone. He'd started keeping it face down and close after I'd been weird, which told me he wasn't stupid. So I did the thing I'd been avoiding. I called Della. Here's why Della, for anyone who missed part 1. She's his mom. They have this sour money history where he treats her like an ATM he's embarrassed by. And when he was setting up the whole surgery pitch, he'd told me she couldn't be counted on, which I now think was less about her being unreliable and more about him needing me to be the one on the hook so nobody in his actual family would see what he was doing. I'd talked to Della maybe 4 or 5 times over 2 years, holidays and a couple of dinners. And she was always fine to me, a little guarded, and once she'd made a comment I didn't understand at the time about how I seemed like a girl who does a lot for people and she hoped Norman knew what he had. I didn't get it then. I get it now. She's watched her son use people her whole life. She's just usually the people. So I called her, and I did not lead with the affair, because I didn't want to sound like a hysterical girlfriend and I wanted information more than I wanted sympathy. I asked her, kind of casual, whether Norman had talked to her about his plans for after recovery, about housing, because I said we'd been discussing the lease and I wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. And there was this pause, and then Della said something that rearranged my whole understanding, which was that she was glad I finally knew, because she'd told Norman weeks ago she wasn't going to keep lying to me and he'd begged her to stay out of it. I sat down on my own kitchen floor. Because Della knew. Della had known for weeks. Not the way you're thinking. She wasn't in on it. She wasn't helping him. It was the opposite. Norman had actually gone to his mother before the surgery. Not for care, but for money. Because Katie's apartment plan needed a deposit. And first month, and he's always broke. And he asked Della to float him a few $1,000s to get set up for the next chapter. And Della, who is done being his ATM, asked what next chapter. And he told her. He told his own mother he was going to let his girlfriend nurse him through the surgery and pay for everything, and then leave for Katie once he could walk. And he said it to Della like it was a smart plan she'd be proud of. Like he'd finally figured out how to get what he needed without it costing him anything. He pitched his mother on it. And Della told him no, that it was a disgusting thing to do to me, and that she wasn't funding it, and that he needed to tell me the truth. And he told her to stay out of his relationship, and that I was fine. I was happy to help, and if she said anything to me, he'd cut her off completely, which is his one move with her, threatening the relationship she keeps wanting to fix. So Della had been sitting with this for weeks, sick about it, not knowing how to tell me without blowing up her own thing with her son, and half hoping I'd figure it out on my own so she wouldn't have to be the one. Which, I have feelings about that, I'm not going to lie. Part of me is furious she didn't warn me, and I told her that on the phone. I said you let me bathe him and lose sleep and spend money for weeks knowing this, and she took it. She didn't get defensive. She just said, I'm sorry, you're right, I was a coward, he's my son and I kept thinking he'd come to his senses. And I believe her, because she had nothing to gain by telling me any of it and everything to lose. And she was crying by the end. Not the fake kind. The kind where a person is ashamed. And then Della gave me the thing that actually mattered, which is that the money conversation happened again, more recently, because Norman circled back to her after the surgery, from my apartment, while I was taking care of him, and asked again for the deposit money now that the timeline was locked in. And this time he told her the move was happening in about 3 weeks, that Katie had put in an application on a place, and that he just needed to get through PT and get mobile and then he'd be gone, which lines up exactly with the message. 3 weeks. So now I had the timeline confirmed from a completely separate source, his own mouth to his own mother. And I knew the deposit was the pressure point, because they can't move without it and he doesn't have it and Della already said no. I want to be really clear about what I felt in that moment, because it wasn't sad. I'd done my sad, on the bathroom tub with a towel on my face. What I felt was that I finally had the whole shape of it. Both women he'd lied to in the same phone call basically. Me and his own mother. And I was done being careful. But being done being careful and being smart are two different things, and I made a mistake. And I have to tell you about it because it's why everything's now on fire. Because after that call, I could not look at him. I went back inside and he was propped up in bed asking if I'd figured out dinner and something in me just would not do it. And he pushed again, asked why I was being like this, said he was really starting to feel like I resented taking care of him. And that word, resented, coming from him, I couldn't hold it. And I didn't tell him everything. I want you to know I kept the plan mostly intact. But I said one thing too many. I asked him how his conversation with his mom went about the deposit, and I watched him realize I'd talked to Della. And he sat up too fast and hurt his knee and swore. And then he flipped. Not the sad, scared Norman, a different one. He wanted to know what Della told me. What did she say? She's a bitter old woman who lies to cause problems. Whatever she said I can't trust because she's always trying to sabotage his life. And I said funny, because everything she told me matched something I already had. And he asked what I already had. And I would not answer, and that not answering drove him insane. Because now he doesn't know what I know. And the whole dynamic he'd been running flipped in about 30 seconds. He started backpedaling into charm, telling me Della must have twisted something. That yes, he'd asked her for a loan, but it was for us. For our future, he wanted to surprise me by getting our finances sorted. And I let him build the whole thing. This beautiful little story about how the deposit was going to be for a nicer place for the two of us. And then I asked him whose name was on the apartment application his mom mentioned. And he said mine, obviously ours. And I said Katie's not on it? And he stopped. He didn't have a fast answer for that, and I didn't scream, even though every cell in my body wanted to. Because I still hadn't decided how I wanted this to end, and I was not going to hand him the exit in the middle of an argument. So I said I was tired and I was going to sleep on the couch. And he called after me the whole way, saying we needed to talk about this like adults, that I was clearly upset over a misunderstanding, that I couldn't just walk away mid-conversation, and I said we'll talk when I've slept, and I shut the door. So here's where it actually stands, and why I need part 3 to figure out my next move. He now knows I talked to Della, and he knows I know about the deposit and the apartment, and probably suspects I know about Katie, but he does not know about the message, the actual words, the pathetic nurse line, and that is still the one thing that's fully mine. He spent this morning being extra sweet, offering to order me lunch, telling me he loves me and we can get through anything. Clearly trying to figure out how much I have before he decides whether to fight for the con or cut his losses and call Katie to come get him early. Della texted me that she'll back me up on everything she told me, that she's finally done protecting him, and that if I need her, she's there. Which is a bigger deal than it sounds because it means when this blows up, he can't spin it to his family as me being crazy. His own mother is standing on my side of the line. And the deposit he needs to start his shiny new life is money he doesn't have. From a woman who just picked me, and he is currently lying in a bed he can't get out of without the person he called pathetic, in an apartment with only my name on the lease. Okay. Norman pitching this plan to his own mother like he'd discovered some brilliant life hack is making me lose my mind. He genuinely expected Della to fund the apartment while Op funded his recovery. This man wanted every woman around him assigned to a different expense. I do feel for Della, but girl, weeks, she knew Op was bathing him and spending money while he waited to escape. I appreciate that she admitted she was a coward instead of hiding behind he's my son, but I would still be furious. Her apology doesn't refund Op's Pito or give her those sleepless nights back. And Norman hurting his knee while panicking over that deposit question. I'm sorry, the timing was a little delicious. Then he immediately invented a surprise apartment for Op. Because apparently his strategy is just saying whatever might work for the next 30 seconds. At this point, I need Katie to come collect him early. She laughed at the pathetic nurse message. so she can handle the crutches while Norman figures out which woman he hasn't asked for deposit money yet. Final update, he's gone. I need to say that first because I know the last 2 posts left you all sitting in the same tension I was living in. And it's over. He's out of my apartment. And it did not happen quietly, it happened at the top of my lungs. And I'll get to all of it. So where I left off, he knew I'd talked to Della. He knew I knew about the deposit and the apartment, but he didn't know about the message. And I'd been sitting on that one line like it was a loaded thing in my pocket, waiting to figure out when to use it. Here's what I figured out over that last stretch of sleeping on my own couch in my own apartment while he took my bed. The message wasn't my weapon. The message was proof for ME. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof I could point to when my own brain tried to soften what he did. But throwing words at Norman was never going to hurt him, because words are what he's best at. He'd just spin them. What was going to hurt him was the thing he actually needed and couldn't get, and that was the deposit, and the mobility and the clean exit on his schedule. He wrote 3 weeks. My whole move was to take the 3 weeks away from him. So here's what I did. And I did it deliberately. And I'm not sorry. I stopped being his recovery plan. Not cruelly, not by letting him rot. I want to be clear, I didn't withhold anything medical. I'm not a monster, and I wasn't going to hand him a real reason to play victim. But everything that wasn't medical, everything that was me subsidizing his exit, I ended that day. The driving to PT that he'd built his whole timeline around. Because remember, he can't drive yet and he was counting on me getting him mobile. I told him I'd used up all my flexibility at work and I was going back to my regular hours and my regular office days, effective immediately, which was true. And which meant I was no longer available to chauffeur him to the appointments that were the entire engine of his get mobile and leave plan. The money, the groceries, the pharmacy runs I'd been fronting, done, and the apartment, the actual roof, the thing his name was never on. I told him he needed to be out. And that is when the real fight happened. And it was ugly. And I'm going to tell you all of it because you've earned it. He came out of the bedroom on his crutches, which he'd gotten decent enough with to move around the apartment. And he'd clearly decided charm wasn't working, so he was going to try reason. And he sat at my kitchen table and asked me to talk like adults. Said whatever Della told me was poisoning me against him. That he loved me. That he'd been scared and confused about the future, but he never actually planned to leave. And I let him do the whole speech, the whole thing. And when he got to the part about how he never planned to leave, I pulled out my phone and I read it to him. His own words. Give me 3 weeks, the pathetic nurse is paying for everything and wiping my ass for free. Once I can walk, she's gone. I read it flat, all the way through, including Katie's laughing face. Including his haha don't. She signed up for this. And he went for the phone, actually lunged across the table to grab it. And I stood up so fast the chair went over. And I told him to get his hands away from me. And that's where I stopped being quiet. I'd been quiet for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks of towels over my face and dishes I didn't need to do just to leave the room. And it all came out at once. And I was loud. I don't care who in my building heard me. I asked him how it felt to write pathetic nurse about the woman who wiped him clean because he couldn't reach his own body. I asked him if Katie knew she was getting a man who pitches his own mother on how to use his girlfriend for free labor. I told him I bathed him. I set alarms at 3 a.m. for his pills. I lost paychecks. And he sat there and typed pathetic nurse to a woman laughing at me from her gym. And he tried to cut in, kept saying it was a stupid thing he said to look cool. That guys talk, that he didn't mean it, and I said you didn't mean it. You wrote it. You wrote a schedule, 3 weeks. You gave me an expiration date while I was buying your antibiotics. And he switched. Because he always switches, and now it was my fault. I'd gone through his phone. I'd violated his privacy. I'd been snooping like I always do because I'm insecure. And honestly, that one made me laugh. This genuine, ugly laugh. Because there it was again. The thing he'd used for 2 years to make me doubt my own eyes. And this time it had zero power because I had it in writing. I told him I didn't snoop. He handed me the phone to charge it, and his betrayal lit up the screen all on its own. And even if I had gone looking, a woman feeding and bathing a man has more right to his phone than he has to a secret exit plan built on her body and her bank account. And he didn't have anything for that. So he went back to the money. Told me I couldn't just throw him out. He had nowhere to go. He couldn't drive. How was he supposed to get to PT? I was going to re-injure him. I was being cruel to a disabled man. A disabled man. 3 weeks of a recovery he'd budgeted my whole life into. And I said, you have a mother. Call her. Oh wait. And that landed. Because we both knew Della had already picked me. And he knew it. And he lost it then too. Started going off about how his mother always does this. Always takes the side of whoever's crying to her. that she's a manipulative woman who's poisoned every relationship he's ever had, screaming this about the woman he'd tried to con out of a deposit 2 weeks earlier. And I let him hear how insane it sounded. I said, so everyone in your life is the manipulator. Your mom. Me. Everyone except the guy who wrote a betrayal timeline in a text thread. Here's the part that actually ended it, and it's the piece I'd set up without him seeing. The deposit. Their whole move depended on getting into that apartment, and the apartment depended on money he didn't have and couldn't get, because Della was his only source and she'd shut it down. And he'd been quietly counting on wearing her down the way he always does. Or on me eventually agreeing to help him get set up back when I was still clueless and in love. Both of those doors were closed now. So when he screamed that he had nowhere to go, he wasn't being dramatic. It was true. And it was true because of choices he made. He told his mother his plan and lost her. He wrote his plan to Katie and lost the free ride. And he never got his name on my lease because he kept meaning to. He built a life that only worked if I stayed stupid. And the second I wasn't, the whole thing had no floor. He called Katie right in front of me, which I think was supposed to prove he had somewhere to land. And I only heard his side. But I watched his face while she talked. And whatever the shiny plan had been, her voice on the other end was not the voice of a woman with an apartment ready and a deposit paid. Because here's what he'd done to himself. He'd sold Katie a fantasy where he arrives mobile, set up, deposit handled, a whole clean new chapter. And instead he was calling her from my kitchen on crutches with no money, thrown out early, a full week ahead of the timeline he'd promised her, and needing her to now be the one to house and haul and fund him. He'd turned himself into exactly the thing he tried to make me, the free labor, the one who pays. And I could see her doing that math on the other end of the line in real time. He didn't leave that day, I'll be honest, because I'm not going to pretend I had the legal right to physically remove him in an afternoon. And I looked it up, and I did it right. I gave him written notice to vacate, and a firm date. Because his name being on nothing cuts both ways, and I wasn't going to hand him away to say I'd locked him out illegally, and drag it into some tenant fight. Della drove down. And this is the part I didn't expect to matter as much as it did. She came and she stood in my kitchen, and she told her own son to his face that she'd heard the plan from his own mouth, that she was ashamed of him, and that he was going to go stay with her, not because she wanted him, but because she wasn't going to let him weaponize being on crutches to guilt me into another week. She took him, not to save him, to get him off my back, and because a small tired part of her still can't fully let him drown. And I understand that. He's her kid. But she made him say out loud, in front of me, that I never owed him any of it. And he said it, mumbled and furious, because the alternative was no ride and no roof at all. Katie, from what I can tell, is not rushing to move in with a broke man on crutches who's now living at his mother's. Which, she read the same message I did, she just read it from the winning side, and now she gets the actual product. Not my problem, I hope they're very happy doing each other's laundry. So where I'm at. He's at Della's. His stuff is boxed and he collected it with her. Itemized. Signed for. No reason to come back. My name is the only name on my lease and it's staying that way for a long, long time. I went back to my job and my real hours and my next paycheck is going to be light and I don't even care. I slept in my own bed last night for the first time in 3 weeks, and I changed the sheets first. He texted me this morning, one more time, saying he hopes I can forgive him someday and that he was in a bad place mentally. I didn't write back a speech. I told him he can walk now, so we're done here. Honestly, Norman's whole plan only worked if every woman around him kept doing her assigned job. Op had to provide the apartment and free nursing. Della had to provide the deposit. And Katie got to laugh and wait for the finished product. The second 2 women stopped cooperating. This mastermind was just a broke man with crutches and nowhere to live. I'm sorry. That is deeply satisfying. I'm still side-eyeing Della for waiting weeks though. I understand that he's her son, and she was scared he'd cut her off. But Op was losing money and literally bathing him while Della hoped he might magically develop morals. Coming to collect him was necessary, not heroic. Helpful, yes. Enough to erase the silence? No, and I was in a bad place mentally, please be serious. He had an apartment listing, a deposit strategy, and a physical therapy timeline. Op's final text was perfect because she didn't give him another emotional conversation to perform in. He can walk now. Great. Keep going. Oh. Anyway, that's the story. Love you guys. See you in the next one.